we're kind of going all the way back to like 2008 here.
No problem.
Obviously, you were on the prelims of that 400 freestyle relay, the crazy 400 freestyle relay in 2008, and you guys actually set the world record on that relay in the prelims. So I just wondered if you had any like, I don't feel like anybody's really asked you about it, but the experience of setting that world record.
Kudos to you. Few people know except probably like me, Ben Wild and Turbener, Matt Grievers, and like Colin probably knows but forgot because he actually set the actual world record later. But yeah, I mean that was a huge part of my career development. I would call it. You know, I think when something like that happens, you kind of respond to it one of two ways, and one is, oh my God, this is awesome! I have a gold medal, and my life is, you know, what I had hoped it was going to be. Or two, it's like, oh crap, like, you know, that was sweet, but hey, I want to be on the finals relay. And at the time, I was still 19 years old, so I wanted to be on the finals relays from then on.
Yeah, I mean, fair enough, honestly.
Yeah.
So sort of a springboarding off that 2008. I know at Cal there was a coaching change. I don't remember if it was leading up to the Olympics or after the Olympics.
Yeah, no, it was. So my freshman year was 06, 07, and I was with Mike, and I was with, you know, all the great athletes that he was coaching at the time. And then we took a year off, and by we I mean myself and Guy Barnea were two guys that were part of the Cal team that took the Olympic waiver, and we went down to the race club down in Florida and the Florida Keys, and we swam with Mike that year. And then Dave came to Cal, and at that point we wanted to, like, you know, he took over, and at the beginning it was kind of scary because he was working those guys so hard that they were swimming so slow, and I was like, oh boy, like what's going on here? And by the time Pac-12's NCs rolls around, I mean, they absolutely light it up. I don't remember what place they got. They were top 5 though, and no one really expected them to. I know that if Guy and I would have been at Pac-10s, we probably would have taken the streak from Stanford a year earlier. Whoops. And yeah, so at that point, and this, you know, this is February, March time. That's when I reach out to Dave, and I'm like, hey man, so I'm still down here. I'm training. I'm going fast. I'm doing well. I'd like to come back. Can I get you know, my scholarship papers? So yeah, and we signed. And then so after 08, Mike went on to Michigan. Obviously, he's done an amazing job up there. I went my way to Cal, and kind of the rest is history.
Obviously, both great coaches, but do you think there was any difference in your training-wise that led to, in 2012, winning the 100 free, and in 2008 being on that relay?
Oh, yeah. I mean, both of them are amazing coaches in their own right. And, you know, they got to know me as a person and as an athlete and what motivated me. And you know, I both of them would have had the path set for them. That's not set for them, actually, that they would have created, and both would have been successful. I have no doubt about that. Dave and Mike could not be like more different, though, just kind of personality wise, and you know, their leadership styles, and both are wonderful, and both are fun. And you know, I think back to speeches or team meetings given by both, and I still get goosebumps to this day. But they're both different.
So sort of springboarding off of that into 2012, I don't want to say nobody thought you would win the 100 free. I mean, I just, it was kind of a James Magnussen was the guy. Yeah. So how did it feel, sort of almost not? I don't think it was coming out of nowhere for you, because you probably trusted your training enough to know that you were heading in a positive direction.
Man, I just wanted to compete, and that's what I always feel like, and what I always like doing is just racing. And fortunately for me, I actually got to lead off the relay against James, the second day of the meet, and I actually beat him. I touched him out by a little bit. That was my first time under 48. You know, that was a great time for me. It was a 47 high something. It was a terrible time for him. It was a 47 high something. But that was the kind of the shot of confidence that I needed. I was like, oh, hey, you know, like this guy isn't as bulletproof as you know, it seemed like. And then James drops down a monster 100 in semifinals. I think he goes a 47.5 or something,
Yeah.
some 47 mid or something.
Yeah, he
So
won
intense
47.6, I think.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
You man, you and your swim knowledge, man. I remember seeing it and knowing it was fast, but not the time. So that there was like a dang, he's back. But at the same time, I was like, hey, we just rate like it wasn't like he
Yeah.
was holding back in the relay in the morning. It's just he had a better swim at that particular time. So I just wanted to race, and I knew what I had to do. I had to go out like. I mean, when I look at those splits, I'm like, dang, man, 22.6 or whatever has never felt easier. Maybe in 2013 it felt a little easier. But it was such an easy first 50. I had so much speed, and then just to be able to come home fast, that was the key there. And I guess to answer your question directly, like, did I expect to win? Like, I don't know. I guess I do remember like early. I do remember going into the race and be like, man, let's just compete. Let's just race for a medal. But if you got a guy next to you that is close to you, like competing is trying to win. It's trying to get your hand on the wall. Whether it was going to be, and I can't remember exactly. I think it was James on one side and maybe Sebastian Verschuren on the other side of me. If it was Sebastian, I would have been racing him. I don't care who it would have been. That's just what it's all about.
That was a pretty loaded 100 free final, though. You had some
That
like
it really
very
was
heavy hitters in there.
Well, it was. I think it was maybe one of the like with the most parity, right? Like
Yeah.
recently, it's kind of been the top has been by far and away like pretty clearly going to win. I mean, in that one we had Caesar on the outside lane, we had Brent getting a bronze medal on the outside lane, we had the guy from Cuba that was going really fast, and then Yannick was having an amazing meet, and then obviously James and I. So, like, come on, man, that was there. You really didn't know. I mean, everybody thought they knew what was going to happen going in, but I guess like looking back, you're like, man, there was a lot of quality athletes in that one.
Yeah.
For sure.
I guess you've said that you love racing, so I'm curious, what would you describe as like your best race or your favorite race, either whether it be from like the technical side, like how you swam it, or just how you felt afterwards?
Certainly the 2012 Olympics is one of them. There's been several. I mean, 2013 we actually got disqualified on the relay, but I think I went like a 46.6 or something, 4x100 medley relay, and that was one of the best swum races I've ever had, because in that race I went out way too fast in the actual race. I think I was out like 22.3, came back 25.4, 25.3 or something, goes 47.7. And that doesn't feel good. That big of a differential. But man, I mean, I knew I had the speed, so I made a good adjustment and then dialed it back. And I think at the time it might have been like one of the, like maybe the second or third fastest split ever. Obviously, Jason's 46.0 is just hard to beat.
Still standing.
Yeah. But it was that was definitely one of them. And then. The 50 is funny. I mean, it really is just all about like going on autopilot and then afterwards being like, oh, dang, like I did hit I hit my finish the way I wanted to, or, oh, sweet, that was a great breakout. Because like you don't have enough time to truly be like, oh, crap, like by my sixth kick off the block, I'm like 4 inches too deep still. Like maybe I just should glide a titch longer. It's like this all has to be in your memory and in like your just not happening in the parts of your brain that actually create thoughts. It just needs to happen.
Speaking of the 50, I remember you set the American record, or the former American record in the 50 free at World Championships.
Yeah.
Yeah, sorry, that was just popped into my head. So obviously you've become known in swimming as like this really positive guy, and rightfully so. I mean, you've been a leader on U.S. teams. You've been a leader to young athletes. I mean, at the meet that I met you at, I saw you just happy to talk to everybody and just happy to be there and be interacting with people. And I think that's a really like positive attribute that you have. But I'm curious when that sort of realization kicked in that people saw you that way.
Oh, good question. I'd say that was kind of a slow build. You know, it starts after making the Olympic team, certainly, and I kind of like. I think even after my freshman year, people started talking to me and treating me a little bit like a leader in a way, even though I was still a freshman at Cal. And then as we went down to the race club, I was a follower, man. I was just there to learn, absorb everything that I possibly could. And then 2008 happens, and it was a successful year. And then you come back to Cal, and although I wasn't one of the captains, you still certainly had a voice amongst the leadership of the group. And then from there, it kind of built because people started, asking for pictures and autographs and things. And I started swimming, pretty good. And yeah, it was something that I definitely wanted to take ownership of. Swimming is a great sport. I think, as we all know, if you're watching this, you probably have something to do with swimming, and you know all the positive lessons that it can teach you. And if I can contribute back to it, I mean, that would be great.
I mean, I think you've contributed in a big way. Just everything that you've managed to do for the sport. I mean, especially
actually, it's funny. One of the swim parents at that meet came up to me and was like, "Man, how do you like? How are you doing this? How like so many people have asked you for pictures?" And I was like, you know what? Honestly, like, especially at the beginning when like I first graduated and my friends first graduated and they told me about their like entry level jobs, I was like, hey, listen. If I'm at a meet for 3-4 hours and I'm taking, a couple hundred pictures and signing autographs, like I'm not on an Excel spreadsheet for 16 hours a day. I'm happy.
It's nice getting that like interaction with people and.
Oh yeah.
Okay, so I want to get into a little bit more serious topic. Obviously, in January 2019, you publicly came out with your cancer diagnosis. And I think that generally shocked everybody. I mean, I remember I was on the way home with my mom, and I kind of was freaking out of it. Just because as we've already said, you're just a person that people look up to a lot. Like, you're a person that a lot of people have a lot of respect for. Can you describe the mindset, like how that affected you? And then what was the process like returning to the water afterwards? Because 6 months later, you were anchoring a 400 free relay to a gold medal.
Yeah. So that was, I mean, it was like anything really. And I think that this is one of the reasons why I so firmly believe in the sport, is that it taught me how to tackle adversity, right? And in swimming and in the sport specifically, it's just like you can become super objective, right? And you need to learn how to let other things go that you can't control. So like what was happening in my body, like, no, I couldn't control it at that point. Like, certainly not. But what I could control is my decision making and my course of treatment. And that's what I focused on, right? Just like in 2012, I had to focus on what I was doing in the pool, not focusing on, oh my God, James Magnussen just won a 47-1 at his Olympic trials. No, I mean, seriously, like that it really is like, that's it. And that's kind of how I broke down my decision making, and luckily, like at Cal, I was a public health major, so I took some statistics courses and just like was okay with understanding, hey, these are my probabilities given the certain treatments, and sometimes it doesn't go right. That's just something that we have to be okay with, and I accepted it. So that's where my mindset and my focus was, and it had to be on something, right? And even after the first surgery, it was like, all right, I need to work with my physical therapist. And at a certain level, it was much more about my mental health when I was working with her, as opposed to like actually getting back into the water any quicker, or developing like my muscles back any better. And certainly those had its marginal benefits, like, no doubt. But it was like I had a purpose, and without that purpose, I mean, that's what, when anybody talks to me about this stuff, or when anybody reaches out on Instagram or whatever about it, I'm like, listen, like, this is going to really suck. The days are never going to feel longer than they are right now. And you need to find something, whether it be a hobby, whether it be just like, calling one of your family members like every day, and kind of rotating through different ones. Like, find something that gives you a little bit of purpose, and that will help get you through it. Just take it day by day, because again, man, like I can talk about this forever, but it's so hard. You get your surgery, and then you have to wait for pathology. And then you're sitting there and you're just like twiddling your thumbs, like, I wonder if I have the worst kind of cancer or if it's completely benign and super slow growing. Like, I have no idea. And then, 10, 14 days later, because it just sometimes takes forever and the labs can get backed up, you get the results. And then you're like, oh my God, like I did actually have one of the faster growing ones. So then we had to be like, well, let's get on, a surgeon's schedule as soon as possible. Wait a minute, the scheduler has these funky hours. Like, I need to call them like 15 times. Oh my, like they didn't like pick up. They haven't gotten back to me. I've left them 10 messages. Okay, well, let's call my primary care doc, talk to him and say, hey, listen, do you have any connections to UCSF? Like, can you call him for me? And these are all things you really just don't know, right? Like, whether you're part of a big like organization, like Kaiser or something, like you kind of just think, oh, I'm in the system, everything's going to work out well. Or, for me, it was, I had my choice of different places that were in network. You have to be your own advocate. And that's just something that's so, so important.
I mean, I think that's just a really, really good mindset to have. And you set a really good example on following through with that mindset, swimming at World Championships that year. And, like, I think people took notice of that.
Oh, thanks.
So following that year, obviously, things got worse worldwide, kind of,
yeah,
a little bit.
Yeah.
So COVID was something nobody was able to predict would happen.
Mm-mm.
Like, we kind of saw it coming a couple of weeks beforehand, but it wasn't. But by no means were we prepared for it. So when I was interviewing your teammate last year, he talked to me about, when I was interviewing Tom Shields last year, he talked to me about how it almost forced him to make a change for the first time in like 10 years. And that obviously had great benefits for him. He set an American record in the 200 fly. He almost set a world record in the 100 fly. Like, he made another Olympic team in the 100 fly. So I'm curious how it affected you, because it obviously affected everyone differently.
Yeah. I mean, in so many different ways. And it's funny you say that. Where actually do you live?
Oh, I'm out in like the East Bay in like Livermore.
Okay, cool. So I currently live in Oakland, but I have friends who live in San Francisco, and we're working in the financial district. I remember getting a picture message of that cruise ship that got denied entry to San Francisco's port, and they were like, "Okay, SS COVID coming into Oakland, here we go," and being like, "Huh, that sounds that's like terrifying. Oh my gosh." I still got to be on my phone somewhere, and yeah, it's a crazy thing. I mean, it's not something that, I guess it had been 100 years since the last time we had anything to deal with like this. We obviously had like SARS and MERS and stuff, but that never had caused this global shutdown. And yeah, I mean, it was tough. It was tough. Like it did cause it forced a lot of change, forced a lot of like uncomfortable situations. I think for me too, and fortunately or unfortunately, I still had my side project, the swim school to work on and build on, and that was I kind of did the same thing. Actually, I kind of did the same thing through my cancer treatments too, and that's when we started getting the documents and stuff together to secure the loan, to talk to the family, and do the business transaction and transition all that stuff. It gave me purpose. It gave me a level of, hey, swimming is still something I love, and right now I can't really engage in swimming. It would have caught if I would have just had to sit at home and sit still, or do jumping jacks all day or whatever. Like I think I would have gone to the level of anxiety. But I was fortunate. I did have something in the project to work on, and we did work on it. So yeah, I think I guess COVID in a way sort of forced me to think about the other side. What's happening after swimming is done? How are we going to build what we have? You know, we had a nice little small business that was running 4 months out of the year, and this is going to be the first year that we're going to do our best to run 11 and a half months out of the year. You know, we're going to shut down for 2 weeks over Christmas time. So yeah, that was kind of, that was on my mind certainly, but it was also good. Like, I don't know, like it's this weird, I don't, what are you supposed to do? You know, you're
I
like,
think
you're
that
talking about
shrug
being at
is pretty
home,
like.
and I'm just like, it was a great thing. I mean, we also, like, I built my family in many different ways. Like,
Yeah.
I had never spent that much time with my wife. Like, even though she was my wife, like, I was still training. She was going into the office, and you know, we were back at home at, you know, 5, 6 p.m. Spent from 6 to 9 together. Went to bed, and then had spent weekends together. Now we're together all the time. We got a dog. Eventually, you know, had Parker too, which was amazing. And there's just, you know, swimming is an amazing thing. And I feel very, very fortunate to be able to have dedicated 100% of my very being to swimming fast for a really long time. But as COVID came, and as you know, you start to have other things pulling at you, you have to figure out how to strike a balance. And I just had to do my best, you know, because when you get home and there's a baby, like, you can't just meditate, stretch, recover, go to bed at 8:30, and do it again the next day. So I mean, it was trying to figure out that balance.
I think that shrug earlier is pretty indicative of how most people felt. I mean, I just know for me, it led me here, to be honest. Because I started this channel like back in August of last year. So it led me down the road that brought me here. So
That's great.
um, so you've kind of given me a perfect segue here to two different questions that I've got for you. The first one I want to ask is more about your experiences out of the water. Obviously, you've had a kid now, which is wonderful, and you're able to spend more time with your family. You've also started working over at Westside Aqueduct. Sorry.
Yeah.
So I just wondered if you could speak to some of the experiences there, especially I know you're working with Will Copeland.
Yep. Yeah. Yeah, certainly. I mean, so we bought the pool in 2019. And that first year was basically just kind of like learning the business from the previous owners, learning the legacy business of the Anchor Swim School. Like, Will had spent, you know, a long time out in New York learning the swim school business, how to teach kids how to swim, learning the back end, you know, answering phones, and then shadowing CEOs, shadowing CFOs, COOs, all that good stuff. And, you know, when you acquire an existing business, there's a level of continuity that people expect, and that we felt was really important because it had a good name in the community. So we did have the previous owner on with us through half of the season. That was amazing, wonderful. We saw everything that, you know, she was doing, and then we tried to figure out our own ways to try to streamline that and build off of it. So that was kind of our first year. Our second year was COVID, basically, and it was I mean, we tried everything. You know, we were listening to city, like, town hall meetings with you know, because at first California was all like, oh, the counties have control over everything, and then so we would have to listen to all the, you know, county commissioners and all that good stuff, figure out what was going on with pools. And then after that, kind of the state government took over, and then we had these little tiers, and then we had to kind of follow that stuff and figure out, you know, the masking situation. Oh, but we're outside. Oh, but we have how many square feet of water, and we can have one family unit per 300 square feet of water. So in the back, you know, it's the whole thing. And eventually there was the pod situation. And so we tried to do we did socially distanced swim lessons, and it was very difficult. The instructors were on the side, and I wouldn't say it was very difficult. It was very different, and it challenged the instructors on their, you know, communication styles and their abilities, because they were telling the parents what to do with their own kids. So the parents were in, and they were holding the kids. Okay, now do a back float. Okay, make sure they can see you. Now count to 10. maybe count to 10 a little faster, that kind of stuff. Okay, now we're doing arm circles. Now, their arm circles, maybe, I know yesterday they had good arm circles, but maybe we need to start working on our kicks and, do some games and play and this and that to make sure that their kicks are where they need to be before we add in the arm circles. And yeah, so that was 2020 summer. And then in the fall, the fall, like, I don't remember when we actually tried doing pod lessons, and that was a experiment that was, probably not something we'll go back to doing, because trying to teach 3 different kids at 3 completely different levels is something that our really extraordinary teachers could do, but our newer ones were just struggling with it and needed a lot of help, and so we'd have to put an extra teacher on the class and all this stuff. I don't actually even know what the question was. I just started talking. Oh, yeah, I remember.
No, you're still on topic. Don't worry about it.
Yeah. So, and then, more recently we did acquire the West Side Aqueducts, and, our rebrand and all that fun stuff is actually going to come out January 1. It's not going to be West Side Aqueducts anymore. I'm not going to tell you, but, you're also not going to be surprised by what the logo and everything looks like when it comes out. And yeah, I mean, that was sort of, I think in this business, in the swim business, you really have to be opportunistic. There's never going to be a good time for anything, right? Because when Will approached me about buying a swimming pool, I was like a week out of a major surgery that went in to, through 4 different incisions, and, it took out 30 or 40 lymph nodes, right? And then he was like, "Oh God," like, "Hey Nathan, can I come over? I have something to talk about." And I could have been like, "Hey, F off, like, I'm working on this right now. I'm just trying to heal up." Or it could have been like, "Yeah, let's go," And it was the latter for me. I think that was an exciting thing to build off of. And the same kind of deal with the swim team. It was only a little bit before trials when we were approached for this, and I was like, "Are you kidding me? Like, this is such an amazing opportunity to work with a team that wants to be better, that wants to build something." I also had the perfect person in mind to be our head coach in John, and we just had to say yes. I just had to take a little bit off my plate in terms of what I was working with and what I was doing at the swim school, and I put a little bit more into working with this working with this team, and here we are, and there's growing pains, and everything is going pretty well. People are going best times in season, which is always exciting. They haven't even thrown on a suit yet. Just kind of introducing them to what we feel like it takes to train to get to the high levels, and it's been a whole lot of fun. It's certainly after a little bit of a disappointing Olympic trials, it's a soft landing for me in that I am still working with and doing the thing that I love.
I mean, that's wonderful that you're still able to get that in enjoyment and be able to be, even if you're not swimming, you're still able to affect the swimming world in a positive way. Sort of spring. You give me another good segue here.
Yeah, great.
You give me another good segue. Obviously, Olympic trials was disappointing, but you handled it with a lot of, at least externally, you handled it with a lot of grace and poise, congratulating your teammates and being there to sign autographs for people. You've been a part of this almost like generation of swimmers: Matt Grievers, Anthony Irvin, Michael Phelps, all these big names that you guys, whenever people think of swimming, they think of the 4 of you essentially. And there's other names as well, Natalie Coughlin and Dana Vollmer, but can you sort of go into the emotion involved in missing the Olympic team? Obviously 3rd in the 50 freestyle.
Yeah. I mean, it was tough. It's not something I was unprepared for. I mean, I really benefited and appreciated USA Swimming's initiative to connect us with mental health people. And, for me, it was a performance thing and working with a psychiatrist to figure out how to balance my life. Again, it was working towards 2012, working towards 2016. it was everything, every little thing. It was like I would even be out at a restaurant and thinking about my food really objectively. It's like, am I getting enough protein in this portion? Am I still getting my fiber? What kind of carbs are these? And making sure if we were out on a whatever night, I'd be like, guys, sorry, I gotta go. It's like 7:30. I'm out in the city, right? I've got to go. It's like 7:30. Like it's gonna take me a half hour, 45 minutes to get home. Then I gotta unwind, blah blah blah, all that kind of stuff. Even being out again. Just thinking about these memories. Even being out at Warriors games, I would like didn't really go to many Warriors games, because like I would just get so excited, and they end at 9 p.m. I get home at whatever time, and then I'm just like still so excited just from the atmosphere,
riding that high,
from the massive speakers, everything going off, Steph Curry draining sweet threes, and I was like, no, like what if I have practice the next day? Like I can't do that. So yeah, that was working with a psychiatrist was really helpful for going down those scenarios, right? Because I think really as an athlete, you elevate, what you're doing and the importance of what you're doing to a certain level, which is adaptive. You need to do it. Like I needed that performance to be my world for so long in order to achieve that performance. And what you need to also realize too, and this is actually something that I learned in 2011, but you can always be relearning this, is that failure is okay. It's something that, like, to invest yourself into something and to fail is a lot less bad for me than I guess. So it's better than being too afraid to invest yourself at all. Right.
Yeah.
And that's when you just have regrets. You're like, what could have been? Or like, then you're the one that's talking about it. Man, if in college I would have just focused on this, or, if I would have had this and, your coach in high school, blah, 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 all that kind of stuff. That's adaptive in its own way too, but you didn't, and if you gave everything you had in terms of what you were able to control, you can sleep easy. And that's how I feel about it. That's how I felt about Olympic trials. The entire time I was training for it, and going through the process with a newborn and working with things happening in my life. It was like, listen, when I'm at the pool, I'm at the pool, and I'm gonna focus on this. I'm gonna train as hard as I possibly can. When I'm away from the pool, I'm still gonna do my best, but there's other things going on.
I mean, at least from the way you talked about it, it sounds like those other things are going really well, though. So at least I'm really happy to hear you enjoying life outside of the pool.
Yeah, certainly. I mean, I would certainly also love to have another Olympic medal in my closet too. Don't get me wrong.
Are you going for it in 2024?
Oh gosh, that's way too far off to know now. But yeah, I have no like. I guess I kind of said how I feel about it.
Yeah.
Like I freaking tried, man.
Yeah. I mean, your statements sort of remind me of in 2018 when Missy Franklin was at U.S. Nationals, the interview that she gave to Swim Swim afterwards. Pretty similar mindset of she tried, and it would have been it would have hurt a lot more. It would have sucked a lot more if she hadn't put in all that effort. Even though she failed, she still knew that she did everything that she could.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So I got one more question for you, and this one's a little bit of a more complicated one. So you've been around for a while. You've been competing at an international level. You were on major international teams all the way dating back to 2008. Obviously, the landscape of the sport has changed a lot. Like, for example, in 2009, there was the polyurethane suits. So is there anything really that you can think of that has, between 2008 and now, like any major changes that have come around in the sport?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. The entire mentality of training has completely changed. And it was, it started with I would say, in the 90s, it was the grind it out. And then I was attracted to the Mike Bottoms of the world. That was the new school at the time. And I think even people have, some young coaches have even built on that. There's like the new school. And I just think the different methods of training have totally changed. I actually love listening to some of the Australian coaches because they aren't afraid to experiment. And that is cool to me. They're like, hey, why do we do this? Why do we experiment to this paradigm of going long to fast? Why don't we start going fast and then lengthen it out? And like, I don't know. I'm not a PhD in human physiology, but I do know what happens in the US, and it has been successful, and people only make these tiny little changes to it, kind of tinker around here, there, whatever.
Yeah.
But to try to go from day one, maybe just doing a couple weeks of, shoulder strength, tendon strength type stuff so you don't hurt yourself, and then going straight into like sprinting and then extending those sprints. I mean, that's cool. Why not try it? And so that's kind of, I think the information age is what has really thrust us into what performances we're seeing. Again, back in, the early 2000s, it was kind of secretive. Right. It was kind of like, okay, you have your Texases, your Stanfords, your Arizonas, your Cals. And it was like, those are the sprint schools. They would get the best sprinters, get the best athletes, and then they would develop them, and they do them really, really well. Now it kind of seems like, hey, there's a lot of different places you can go to be successful and swim really, really fast, which is cool. And I think, I think USA Swimming has done a great job of that, of creating an environment where sharing is good, right? Because I think there are still, even internationally, there are still other countries that are closed off, or they're like kind of being sneaky, and they're trying to, when other teams are on deck, they're doing weird stuff to try to throw people off. And it's like, when we're Team USA, and we're Team USA, gosh, I guess twice a year at the international meets, the coaches are talking. And the coaches are available for, an athlete to come up to them and be like, hey, like, what do you think about this? What do you think about that? And, the ISL is actually a major contributing factor to all that too, because, the college coaches can't go. But you got, people like Kelsey right now, or Tom right now, swimming absolutely lights out. They're certainly learning from, whether it's their coach of the team or it's, coaches of the other team. Like everyone loves seeing fast swimming. So I think that's kind of my understanding of it. Oh, also, I mean, actually,
I've got my LA Current shirt on.
I'd be completely remiss not to mention, I do think there's just this mental aspect of it that is just so unbelievably powerful that no one really can quantify it quite yet. Again, just going back to my time in high school, it was like maybe one or two people had ever broken 20 to go into
17.
Yeah, exactly. Go into college, and now it's like you almost need to go to the top schools, and there's just that mentality of, okay, like it's race day, right? And because you need to go faster, you're going to invest more, and it's maybe it's going to start the night before. Like, we have a race day tomorrow, we're going off the blocks. Like, I got to get my good meal in, I got to get some good sleep in. I'm going to get a good stretch in and work on my shoulder stuff. And then, the next day they go lights out, and that kind of builds on that. And they're like, wow, they kind of, their eyes get big. They're excited. They did something that they had never done before, and then they want it more. And that's kind of how you get scooped up into the sport, right?
Actually, I remember you were pointing out now you got to almost go under 20 to get into like a college for 50 freestyle. Mm-hmm. You're not wrong about that. I was at the Cal Invite a couple of years ago, and one of my friend's moms was talking to one of the assistant coaches, and she asked him, like, oh, what does somebody have to go in the 50 freestyle? He was like, under 20. So you're not wrong about that. So I actually completely forgot to write it on here, but I wanted to ask you about the ISL, actually, because obviously you competed in it. Please. You competed in it last year. The first year, okay.
First year.
You competed in the first year. Mm-hmm. Yeah, how was it? Like, obviously it's brought about a lot of changes for the sport.
Amazing. I think it's beautiful. I love watching it. I love, following it. And I think it's cool for athletes to have other avenues outside of just the traditional Olympics, World Championships, Pan Pacific Games to try to, make a living.
I think it's going to provide a lot of longevity for people who maybe would have retired already.
Yeah, that's a double-edged sword, certainly.
Yeah.
I think we do need to caution against people, living day to day off of money they may have earned off of ISL. We, make sure we have our contingency plans and maybe a long-term plan. But that being said, I mean, it's wonderful just to see the ability of people to, who are good swimmers in college and then just absolutely blossom once they're done. Yeah, I cannot wait till it's like not a bubble situation.
Yeah.
Maybe I'll partake, but I can't possibly go out to Europe for 8 weeks at a time these days. So until then, I'm probably out. And watching it live is just phenomenal.
It's so much fun.
So much. I mean, really, I wish the TV could kind of capture that a little better, but it just doesn't. It's the same. Again, it's the same as Warriors games. Until you feel that bass from the speakers, like rattling your inner organs, like you don't really get into games. And it's the same way there. And again, when you're there, you have sympathy pains for those in the skins races.
It almost seems like when I'm watching it, it seems like it's the same level of almost relaxedness as like high school meets, for example. Because I remember when I was at high school meets, I would do a lot better than I would do at like some in-season meets just because I'm relaxed and I'm enjoying myself. Obviously, there's a lot of like, it's high school meets, but like on another level. There's a lot more going on.
I think that's so actually that, and honestly too, I think that's one of the paradigms that has changed too, that has elevated, swimming performance too. It's just the importance of race pace, the importance of being able to go fast in season. There's just, certainly there's still people and teams that do the money in the bank, putting a ton of yardage in, and then, going really, really fast times at the end of the year. But with this, like there's not really room for it. And it's really cool to see those. I mean, it was like the World Cups were the original people that were figuring that out. I remember Tom leaving, I don't remember, but he had a really successful World Cup 2015 or 14 or something. He had a really
successful one this year too.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah. This entire fall. So I'd say this is better, but I remember back then was when I was really into the training, with him when he would come back, and it was cool to see because he was resting, but then he'd still come back, and he would still be able to do all these crazy sets with everybody else that you really didn't think you could do because I can't do that. I'm not in shape anymore. And then he goes off and he goes to halfway around the world into Russia, into a place he doesn't speak the language, figures out the subway system, crushes really fast times after he's shaved, and then comes back and then hops right back in to a high volume program at the time with Yuri, I think. So that was really something cool, and it changed my mind kind of forever in terms of that training stuff.
Yeah. All right. Well, it's been great to have you. It's been great talking to you. Yeah. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for having me, and thank you for being such an informed interviewer. It's fun having kind of these in-depth conversations. It gets my mind going. I love thinking about it. I mean, I
enjoyed it a lot too.
Yeah, that's one of the things that it kept me going in the sport is, hey, how do we figure out this? Like I love watching these videos on Instagram. Like I don't know how these breaststrokers engage their lats so well at the top of their stroke, and I'm like, man, that's the kind of stuff that I would think about, and I don't know, still think about it now. So thank you to you for thinking about kind of the other stuff and the
oh yeah, for sure,
culture and all that good stuff. So all right, man.